Real pleasure to have Stephany Lepierre today, CEO and founder of TealBook, based in Toronto, friendly neighbors up north. They provide a supplier-based intelligence platform. And I've seen a demo, it is impressive. They use machine learning to provide a very composite supplier profile. I'm not doing it justice. I'm going to let Stephany introduce herself and brag about TealBook for a few minutes. Thank you, Stephany.
Thank you, Vinnie, for having me. So I'm Stephany Lepierre. I'm the CEO of TealBook. And what we do is we use primarily machine learning, as you mentioned, and we go and get information using the webs and different databases. So today we are using over 400 million different data sources. And then we normalize the information and we bring it into what we call a universal supplier profile for every B2B company in the world. And we use our machines to not only extract the right information, understanding what we're extracting and how it is being displayed and organized, but also to understand how complete and how accurate the data is within a profile, so that our customers can use that universal supplier profile to connect to any of their systems, or they can even, through our interface, deploy it to people across the organization so that they distribute the same information about their suppliers from one place. That helps coordinate and synchronize data. It gets to keep information up to date across multiple systems. It also provides information in the hands of people making decisions every day so that they can access the information that they need on suppliers and be able to deliver better, faster outcome for their business.
You know, that's where the whole supplier space has had a lot of data, but not in very fragmented. So pretty neat what you're doing. Stephany, in all the doom and gloom during the last few months, I've been running this series for 6 months now. I've seen all kinds of heroics, acrobatics, I call them. You know, obviously the healthcare heroics, 3M capacity quadrupling in the US, the SBA making 5 million PPP emergency loans to small businesses, last mile logistics that have kept us fed and sheltered. I mean, just mind-boggling, the scaling up, scaling down, rapid innovation, and so on. You get to deal with a lot of customers, a lot of suppliers. Tell me what you've seen that made you go, wow, I didn't think that was doable.
I think this period has shown both sides. So some organizations have unfortunately been significantly impacted, and especially small businesses. And so I do feel grateful that being on the upside of the crisis, being focused on supply chain data, has been a huge accelerator for us, primarily because it made organization acutely aware that information is incredibly important to make decisions, to adapting to the changes of the market and the needs of the business. And what we've seen is in procurement or supply chain is that there's been millions of dollars investment in software technologies, and still teams were paralyzed, not be able to capitalize on their supplier base fast enough. We're quite blinded by the fact that there's tens to hundreds of thousands of suppliers in their vendor master that they already have under contract, but not knowing how to optimize them, not knowing necessarily the ones that had the capacity to help them increase the demand or shift their production, and then let alone be able to go out to the market to be able to find suppliers to ensure business continuity, or source for new raw ingredients, or even simply to secure PPEs to keep your employees safe. And so we had this sort of a bit of frantic, situation in the market where everyone was suddenly looking for different suppliers for different reasons, but no real good source of information in order to do that. And it certainly was not within the organization itself. I think one of the heroic thing that we've seen is in our team, within a couple of days of the crisis, we had just raised capital and we had our plan for 2020, and we're starting to execute on that plan. And it's our team that said, we can do something. We have so much data on millions of companies. And something that our machines does really well is identifying trends and similarities between suppliers and looking at 300 different dimensions. So we have this very powerful machine learning enabled network that we can easily find suppliers based on their goods and services, similarities, size, geography, requirements. And so we announced to the market and we executed on this, offering any organization in the public or private sector that were impacted by COVID that they could reach out to us, and we were going to give them lists of suppliers to help them out. And the response from the market was, overwhelming. We've received over 170 requests in the first 3 weeks. And these were large organizations from the public and private sector. Some notable, Brooke Brothers being able to find raw ingredients for 7 separate sources of raw ingredients to make over 100,000 N95 masks that met the requirements were one of the examples. We also landed, the UK government was in the news quite a bit. We saw supply chain in the news a lot. And they were looking to increase.
The Nightingale project? their Nightingale project?
Well, they were looking for PPE suppliers outside of China. And so what we're able to do is give them access to a network to be able to find over 60,000 manufacturers of PPE that were specifically ISO certified. And so by looking at certificate that we aggregate using machine learning, not services and not suppliers updating a portal themselves, we're able to, at scale, very rapidly, we got them set up within 72 hours, is giving them access at scale to manufacturers that had a history of selling PPEs that were ISO certified, to have a baseline, at least, of quality with the contact information so that the UK government could start reaching out to those companies. So it can be really powerful when you're looking for information fast and at scale. And we've seen many, many examples of that, especially in the first 3 to 4 months. And I think what we've shifted now is sort of, now that the majority of companies feel that their foot are kind of, a little bit more stable and their supply chain has a little bit more stability, is now there's a lot of, it highlighted a lot of priorities around now, how do we mitigate risk, by having more transparency, more visibility into our supply chain, how we create a bit of disparity in our own supply chain to mitigate risk of having suppliers in one country. And we're already seeing that with Brexit and the opportunity to replicate your supply chain in different countries you operate. But we're seeing all the trends leading now to being able to address what the need, how a company can compete and how can you move forward with having a more resilient, more agile, more diverse supply base. And those all, are all quite consistent with our focus and data.
So Mark Benioff, CEO of Salesforce, he made a comment 4 or 5 months ago that keeps coming back to me. He said, is this a pandemic or is it an epidemic? Right? He said it started off as a health crisis, became a financial crisis, then became a diversity crisis, and in parts of the country, it's become a climate change crisis, right? I imagine your needs have shifted. So it started with PPE. I imagine people are now looking for diversity. Tell me how it's evolved, your customer needs, or what they're asking you for.
Yeah, luckily before COVID, we had already been searching for what attributes, what certificate do our customers have to continuously ask their suppliers to upload in different portals. And most organizations will have a diversity function with a diversity solution, and then we'll have a separate sustainability solution, and then we'll have another risk solution, and so on and so forth. And so you have disparity in your own data across systems. And the ability to aggregate all these certificates into this universal supplier profile give you access to all this information in one place that you can then distribute to software if you want to keep using the functionality of those software. And so we were in a fortunate position as Black Lives Matter happened, right? We had suddenly organizations that may have not been required for compliance reasons to report their supplier diversity spend, but suddenly the CEO wants to know. The CEO wants to be able to communicate that information to their shareholders. And so very quickly in banking and retail, again, areas that we hadn't seen supplier diversity to be as, it was there, and it was driven typically by social corporate responsibility, but not like compliance reasons or requirement for working, for example, with government contracts. And so we saw this spike of companies reaching out to us to understand what their baseline for supplier diversity. And to give you a sense of the scale, today we, through machines, aggregate over 800,000 certificate for small and minority-owned businesses across 500,000 companies. And we, through Machine, can take a vendor master, a messy vendor master with very little information, but we need some information to be able to do the match. And we can unify that vendor master to TealBook in a way that it turns the light on to the data, and we can improve the completeness of the information by over 80%. And that includes supplier diversity. And so we were able to provide, a really strong response and outcomes within days to let our customers know how much diversity spend they have that's validated with a certificate, by classification, by suppliers that they can actually report on. And the other thing that our machine does is it also identify companies that are small and diverse but are not certified, which shockingly represents 95% of small and diverse businesses. And suddenly you've got these big tech companies and these banks coming out and making this commitment to improving opportunities for small and diverse businesses, when in fact only 5% of those small and diverse businesses are certified. And the reason why typically is cost and the effort and the resources required to maintain. And we hear this all the time from small and diverse businesses, that they have to upload over 500 different portals with the same information. And the upside is not as strong that it's worth all of this effort. And so in partnership with our customers, we've built within our application a self-certification process that's authenticated, approved by the SBA, and recognized by our Fortune 500 customers. So suddenly our clients, since this initiative, are able to recognize $30 to $100 million in additional diversity spend, opening a pipeline of innovation within their organization and lowering the burden on these small diverse businesses to in fact get certified in a way that's recognized. And so that's been a big change. And then we're seeing the same trends with sustainability now. Like, sustainability is more difficult to access because there's different certificate, and which ones do you recognize and how do you identify those suppliers? So through machines, be able to give the baseline and give the potential and the mechanism to reach out to those suppliers, to invite them to come into, not to populate their profile, but to be able to enhance it or validate it. And that's sort of the benefit, is that we don't depend on suppliers to come to TealBook to deliver that value. But as our customer starts working with us, they're able to engage the suppliers and then get that completeness score closer to 100.
Data has exploded, right? Yours has. We've got a whole bunch of data on, obviously, the John Hopkins data on COVID, new sports statistics with asterisks because of strange seasons we've had, obviously the US polling, the census data. I mean, databases have just exploded in 2020. I'm just mentioning a few. And yet, I blame this a little more on the media. People have become very selective in what they pick from data. Right. So in the COVID crisis, we've seen a lot of focus on cases, but not so much on fatalities going down, hospitalizations going down. So I get the sense in the common person that, Mark Twain's statement, there's lies, damn lies, and statistics. I honestly, in the common man, I'm sensing cynicism about data. What in the corporate world, maybe not so much, but I'm concerned about it. Should we be worried about credibility of data out there?
Absolutely. I think it all comes down to trust, right? How do you trust the data? And trust to us means being transparent. We're not promising perfect data across 100% of your suppliers, but we're on a journey to get there, and we have the mechanism to improve it over time. And we let our customers know how complete, how relevant the information is, so that they can gauge their decision or know if they need to supplement it as the data continues to get better. So the other thing is that our customers can interact with the data, which gives them also the opportunity to correct it or enhance it based on their needs, which then, adds to the completeness and the accuracy of the information. The other layers is using machines, and that's been in the past, high quality and trust came from people, and having people, doing quality control on information, which I think in some part is true. But with the scale now and the advancement in computing, we're able to get to a much higher rate of accuracy and completeness. and then be able to aggregate information, content, in a way that our customers can understand how relevant that supplier is to their organization, their sector, what are the trends of that supplier, so that they can also get this relevance score, this comfort that the supplier is in fact known by their sector, by other companies like them, or known within the organization, and then delivering insight based on that. But it comes down to the type of information and then also the transparency. And that's a big change from what type of data was available, or the mass kind of type of data that's being distributed. And unfortunately, if you have just a highlight of what the story that someone wants to tell versus having access to the information and being transparent about it, then you can spot check the data, you can report on it, you can even do data quality on it if you need to get that level of trust. And so I think, and to your point, I think in the enterprise, I mean, our customers are very focused on security of the data and trust of the data, because they need to have, they need to be able to make decision based on the information that's given to them. But yeah, I think it comes down to little wins. Sometimes you start with wins and then you can see the outcomes and they can check the outcomes. And then over time, as they gain that level of comfort and they're seeing ROI and they're seeing really great outcome for their business and the speed of those outcomes, it's easy to convert them to become more excited. And I think one of the barriers in our space, specifically in the supplier data, is that in the past, data was so difficult to improve, right? You have, our customers have bought technology, software to workflow the information, but they still needed, in order to keep the information, the data synchronized, they needed system integrators, they needed services to clean and enhance that information over and over again. As soon as they receive it, it decays, right? They rely on people in the organization, on IT resources, subsidized with market intelligence, and then a high dependency on suppliers to come to portals. And they typically don't do it because there's so many portals, or they do it for a very narrow piece of information. So you never end up with good quality data. And so the big data problem and messy data is something that's really well known in the enterprise and is almost accepted. And we've seen also software companies telling a really good story around cloud-based technology leading the digital transformation and digitizing the procurement and supply chain function, when in fact, software is not data. And so I think having something that's so easy and simple as a solution, that's off the shelf, that plugs into your own vendor master, that turns the light on in a way that you can do it before, there's almost a disbelief of like, it can't certainly be that easy. You saw TealBook in a demo, like to have all your information synchronized and aggregated and enhanced by over 80% of all the suppliers you do business with, even the one you spend $100 with, is very powerful. And when we present to investors that don't come from the space, we almost have to pause and tell them, like, this looks easy, but I'm telling you, in the real world, the way that this has been done so far, it's been incredibly hard. Companies have tried and spent millions of dollars trying to tackle this problem. And it's the type of computing and the use of our machines and the way that we went to go to market to be able to offer this solution is quite transformative. Anyway, I kind of went on a side tangent, but data in the enterprise world, especially when it comes to suppliers, have been really, really hard. So it's that gain that element of trust that it's actually true, it can be simple, and it can deliver endless value.
Trust is a big thing, right? Too many Mark Twains out there with the view that data is mostly lies. Let's talk about supply chains. You touched on it earlier, but it seems like every supply chain has been broken down, right? Not just the China-centric manufactured high-tech stuff. We saw the food supply chain breakdown, toilet paper supply chain breakdown. Now we're about to enter into a cold chain challenge with vaccine distribution and so on. I'm sure your customers have used this to reassess their supply chain, reconfiguring their supply chains. Have you heard of instances of that, or are you not privy to as much of what they're doing with your data?
Because we don't workflow in supply chain, right? So we're really the data that can feed into a supply chain tool. But what we've seen is one, relocating supply chain. So absolutely sourcing suppliers in different countries. If you have to replicate your supply chain in different countries, it's a lot of work to source, to do the validation, onboard those suppliers, maintain the information, pay suppliers in different countries. So it brings a lot of complexity. And so TealBook becomes incredibly.
What are you hearing there? Because I hear a lot of frustration with China, but then reality sets in that, hey, look, they had the best logistics, shipping facilities in the world, docking facilities in the world, scale of manufacturing, and so on. Is that mostly talk? Are you seeing people actually make some tangible decisions? It's going to be.
Oh, we've seen tangible decision about moving their supply chain because it became a risk, or having second and third source, right? So maybe we'll leave a supplier in China, but we'll get a similar supplier in Vietnam or in different countries.
Yeah, I heard it called China plus one. So.
That's right. Or plus two or plus three. Depends on how risky your supply chain is. Especially in the biotech sector, you may want to second and third source every supplier, because if you get into incidents where you can't get supply, you've got patients and you've got some big problems. We've seen retailers moving out of China already. It was happening before COVID, but I do think that in the retail space specifically, we've seen a big change. Yeah, so I'd say definitely there's definitely sensitivity, and it's more from a risk mitigation approach. And then with the new executive order that we saw, and we've talked to chief procurement officers, focus on bringing supply chain back to the United States. And so finding local suppliers in a really competitive environment, it can be a real challenge. And so being first to market to find those suppliers, having first, second, third source, being able to secure those suppliers as well. So there's some commitments that are being made. And then it's the access, like how are you sharing this information across the organization, across all the buyers that this supplier will impact, has been really key. And so we've seen our customers have used our interface actually to have every buyer communicate any change or news related to COVID across any of their suppliers into TealBook. That's a really powerful way to be able to upload the communication. It's authored, it's dated. They got to tag COVID, and then that information is shared in real time across all the different businesses, often highly decentralized. And so other ways that you can, it's transparency, visibility, and you can mitigate risk. But risk, I'd say it's sort of swayed really, really hard on risk. We'll see sort of a balance, I think, between risk and the agility and the requirements that are going to move. But risk is going to be, I think, it was so much of the disruption happened because companies were not prepared.
Yeah. So Stephany, let's switch gears and talk about, there's so much data, right? Not just yours, but just data in general. Data science must be a fascinating area for young people. What I'm sure you get young teenagers or young graduates come to you and say, should I stay in the data space? Should I get in the data space? What advice can you give our young workers?
Oh my God, yeah. I mean, it's just beginning. In our space, 4 or 5 years ago, we used to host webinar to educate procurement and supply chain on machine learning and AI because they didn't have a baseline. And now we haven't talked about that. We just talk about the outcome, but there's a lot of curiosity. And it's just beginning, really. I think it's an incredibly dynamic. For us, the market is very tight. We've been fortunate. Our CTO sits on the admission committee at the University of Toronto Machine Learning program. And we're very, very fortunate culture and opportunity. But we've taken 9 interns in the summer, and we just offered 2 of our interns full-time roles. One was the top 3 of our class at U of T, and they've accepted the role and now are telling their friends about TealBook and the opportunity. And we've got applicants. And we do like there's a balance between our talent and the data team that understands the business purpose of why we build models, and then working very closely with the younger data scientists that are building these models in a way that delivers the best outcome. But our interns are very curious about how our customers are using this information and what they're working on. How does that improve the quality of of our customers, but also opportunities for small and diverse businesses. There's a lot of pride in that. And so I think the combination of the size of the opportunity, how dynamic this space is, supply chain, our case, and then do something good for the world will attract that talent. And so I'm maybe speaking more to a leader, but finding that purpose that allows people to be excited working for you. We found that to be really key. And for us is, how do you turn the light on to every B2B companies in the world so that they get considered for the right type of opportunities with the right type of customer and can continue delivering with those customers, across the organization without having to redo business development over and over again within the same customers. Like generating that visibility is very powerful for those small and diverse businesses. Hopefully that answered your question.
Oh, no, and it's great to hear you talk about inspiring younger people. And I'm glad you made those internship offers. A lot of schools had to withdraw them. A lot of companies had to withdraw them, and that you're, getting your own supply chain going of talent. So
we're talking about books. There's a book that says that talent is grown, not hired. And I think there's a blend. I think there's some roles where we need people that hit the ground running and know and can lead the way. But if you can bring people in that you can train and they can leave your company one day being so proud, being at your company, and then leave your company and pointing for us to have TealBook and their LinkedIn and their resume. Like that's my wish for our company, is that we can have people that are really proud, that know when they worked at TealBook, it was smart. Like it's almost like when I think of Google, I meet people that worked at Google. There's almost no question in my mind, they must be really smart. I'm not sure that's necessarily true for all Google employee, but that's the impression it gives me, and that's the impression I want my team to have.
I live near Dunedin, Florida, and the Toronto Blue Jays, obviously that's their spring home, and so I always think of farm systems, and business has gotten away from internship, and it's good to see at least some of you move back to that model, because we really, we should be getting a lot younger talent early on.
Yeah, they're really impressive. Like we got a contest going within our team. So first, our CTO is an incredible leader. That helps because he's taken this on. and our team, our senior engineers and data scientists are also very keen on teaching. It's a great opportunity for them to learn new skills, frankly, in managing people and we even had more junior engineers and data people on our data team that worked with the interns and give them project and got to coach them. So it was sort of a good opportunity for everyone. And then they did a contest to come up with ideas. And it was really fun. And then they came up with some really interesting concepts and they got to present it. So, and honestly, we were so impressed with the quality of the presentation, the outcome of their ideas, and how they're able to execute on them. So no, I highly recommend, if you have the bandwidth and you're able to give that type of opportunity. For us, it's been incredibly positive.
Stephany, you're an inspiration in a lot of different ways. Any final thoughts?
No, I appreciate the opportunity. We met at the Workday analyst session, and we're very proud to be part of the Workday portfolio of companies. They invested in TealBook because of our focus on supply, specifically because of our affiliation with the University of Toronto, the type of talent we have in machine learning. And so we're very grateful for them as a partner and as an investor. And we're continuing on our journey. We're not stopping. This is just the beginning. So we're moving fast and furious in our investment in data.
Leanne, the co-head of the fund, presented in this series last week, and she had nice things to say about you. So I think the feeling is mutual. Thank you so much, Stephany. Stay safe, stay warm up in the tundra up in Canada, and keep doing what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Vinnie.